There's a man who I now see in the background. He's waiting backstage right now. And he's a guy that I'm excited to have on, and he's a guy that I'm sure that many of the Flyers faithful are excited to hear from. I'm going to look and see if he gives me a thumbs up. If he has a thumbs up, we know we're good. All right, ladies and gentlemen, who better to bring on than somebody that you may or may not hear from around the Philadelphia Flyers on a daily basis? Jason Myrtetus is here. Jason, how are you?
Mystery guest again. I did a mystery guest thing last week, too. I didn't know I was a mystery guest. Yeah.
I did. So welcome in. How you doing, fella?
Doing good. I was at the Flyers alumni golf outing this morning, taping some stuff with Anthony Sanfilippo, as a matter of fact. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, my ride home, boom, Trevor Zegras is a Flyer, and I'm waiting for the compensation. And I see the compensation. I go, huh? That's all they want. That's all they had to give up for him? I couldn't believe it.
It kind of felt like an absolute haymaker, right? Like, listen, the Flyers used my clip last year in some of their promotional stuff where I said the Danny Briere has officially begun.
Briere.
This to me feels like one of those moves that's kind of like the it's not like a big balls on the table. That to me is like a trading up for a Roger McQueen. This is the thing that I keep manifesting into the world. We'll see if it ever happens or not. But this is like one of those incredibly low risk, high reward sort of moves. And like I was telling the people at the start, for the last year or so, the names like Frost and Farabee and maybe even York have been kind of floated out there. There was a thought that it might take a first-round pick. Now, Zegras has missed time over the last 2 years. There was also the concern about, would Torts be a fan of coaching Zegras, all that. For this to go down, for it to cost you a bottom six forward in Paling, the number 45 overall pick, and a fourth-rounder that, unless somebody finds a needle in a haystack next year, probably amounts to nothing. I was shocked. It sounds like you were pretty shocked. Does that kind of speak to where this player's value has just gone overall in league circles? Because I think everybody would have expected it would have been at least a little bit more, right?
Yeah. I mean, you would have thought a first-round pick, a little while ago. But, again, he had the injuries this past season that he dealt with. And the thing is that the amount that he's been injured is concerning, and it hurts his value, for sure. But the thing about the injuries is none of them are repeat injuries. He had a torn meniscus in his right knee. That happened this past season in December. He came back in January. He missed about 6 weeks. He had a broken ankle from January of 2024 that kept him out a significant period of time the year prior. And he had an injury in 2023 that caused him to miss 20 games. So he's missed cumulatively over the last 2 years quite a bit of hockey. Yeah. You look at 31 games the year prior and 57 last year. It's 88 games. But the thing is that also affected his values. In those 88 games, he only had 18 goals and 29 assists for 47 points, when the 2 years prior, he was at over a 60-point per season guy. So his value clearly did decrease quite a bit. And I think it's interesting that Danny Briere did business with the GM that he did business with before, too, clandestinely, and that's Pat Verbeek. They did the Cutter Gauthier deal, of course, and nobody knew about it. We didn't know this was coming. It's a classic low-risk, high-reward, change of scenery guy. And we should have known because they told us they were going to do this. This is the kind of guys they were looking for. Yep. It's funny because everything they kind of said they were going to do 2 summers ago when Jonesy was introduced in the new era of orange and all that, they kind of been like checking boxes one at a time and doing them. It's amazing.
And it's one of those wild things where, like, I put out a tweet earlier today, and I was trying to give people, like, an idea macro sense. Because, like, listen, NBA and NHL drafts are the same week, and you always have like the jokes out there, right? About like, put this in NFL terms, put this in NBA terms. And so like, I did like the macro view of it. He just turned 24 in March. He's making $5.75 million coming into this season. He's an RFA after this year. So you're going to get to kind of test out the car before you really buy it. You're either going to decide that number needs to go up and needs to go down. Perhaps if it doesn't work out here, there's another team who wants to get those exclusive negotiating rights for a little bit. So that's potentially there at the end of the season. He's a creative player, not exactly a 200-foot player. You think about having a guy who could, speed-wise, skill-wise, benefit Matvei Mishkov in a big way. He seems to kind of fit the bill there. The concern, obviously, is that the injuries over the last 2 years maybe have kind of hurt his ability to grow. And in fairness, like in Anaheim, I think there's been a little bit of a concern about just the development of some of these players. But, I throw out the Mishkov idea. You have young wingers on this team, whether it's Tippett, it's Forster, it's Mishkov. You have proven guy like Travis Konechny. If you had to go off of what you know about how Zegras plays, who would you think is the most beneficial wing to have on either side? Like, do you think the Flyers could test out having him play with Mishkov, or do you think they'll go the more veteran route, having a Konechny perhaps flanking him?
I mean, I don't know. I think you look at everything because it's weird because you don't know when chemistry is going to. Sometimes you think two players will be great together and they just can't play together. And you're like, I would have bet my retirement that these two guys would be great together the way you look at their game and the way you thought they would complement each other. But on the ice, they just can't seem to get on the same page. I think we saw that a little bit last year with Zibanejad and JT Miller. As a matter of fact, you would think those two players would go together great. They didn't. They'll probably try it again. But yeah, I mean, I think you try out everything. And, that's what preseason and training camp and frankly, the beginning of the season and throughout the season is going to be. I think when you look at offensive lines, the way I've always looked at it is you find two guys that play really well together. And that third guy tends to change. He's kind of a variable guy. You had Giroux and Voracek for years, but who was the other guy? Simmons sometimes, or a different guy would move into that role when things would dry up or get stale. But you find those two guys. It's interesting because I think Zegras long-term is better off on the wing than he is at center. Now, he's going to come in here. He's going to have a chance to play center. Mm-hmm. I know the Flyers, they've said they want him to be a center, but we'll see. I think he's better off as a winger. When you go out and if you're able to acquire a bona fide 1C, then I think maybe you look at him on the wing. But right now, they have the need at center, so I think he's going to get the opportunity. Who he's going to play with, again, you look at size, and you want to have some size on a line, a guy. The line's got to check like the boxes. You got to have the guy that wins loose pucks in battles and feeds the other two guys. So who's that other winger besides Mishkov if he's at center? You gotta find that guy. Is it a Tyson Forster? That's a good name. Is it Owen Tippett? To a lesser degree, a good name. But they have some options there. They can look at a bunch of different guys in that role. And again, is Mishkov going to play the left or is he going to play the right?
Yeah, I mean, there seemed to be at least that attempt at flexibility last year, right?
And Shabanov now too, if he comes.
Well, it depends on who you believe, depends on what you believe. But like that, I floated the idea. It would be kind of funny, like a Shabanov, Zegras, Mishkov line would probably be the most fun one to watch in the offensive zone. God help
the water gnats.
God help them trying to get out of their own zone. But if they can actually line up in the offensive zone, it would be interesting. Zegras, though, so you mentioned the possibility that maybe he's best suited to be a wing. Obviously, they hope that he's going to be a center. Financially, maybe they would rather see him be a wing this year and then a few years into the next deal, switch him to center. But I have to imagine that on the power play at least. So I keep telling people this. I'd love to get your thoughts on it as well. But I thought that before this move, Danny was kind of setting this offseason up to be one that gets them close to the playoffs. Like I think it's a higher than not chance that they're in playoff contention next year than they're desperately out of it. That's predicated on them getting a goalie that can kind of stabilize things better than a Kolosov and a Fedorov, and also that the power play is going to be better because the power play was god awful, right?
I hated it.
So Zegras coming in has to make the power play better, right? Like it has to.
I mean, at this point you can't make it worse. I think the power play was actually worse than it was statistically. Mm-hmm. I think the numbers looked inflated compared to what I saw in every game at times. And they had the one good run, I guess it was in January into February on the power play. But other than that, it just looked abysmal. And it was so deflating. And when you're a team that has a trouble scoring, and then you have a power play that looks so upside down and disjointed, it's frustrating. I don't want to hear about a lack of talent because there's teams that had less talent than they did that had a much better power play than they did. So it's one of those things that I'm just hoping is almost a non-story this year. It's good. It's close to average. And what that'll do to inflate certain guys' numbers like Michkov, Tippett, Konechny. Now you're taking them to a different level of point production player if they can actually get a power play that does something. But yeah, I mean, Zegras is a creative playmaker. Where does he fit on a power play with a positionless guy like Mishkov? It will be interesting to see. I think the biggest thing they need to figure out there, though, Russ, is simple. Who does the power play go through? Who is the alpha? Every power play has to have an alpha. The guy that goes, I don't care how we get into the zone. I don't need to bring it in the zone. But when we get in the zone and we get set up, you get it to me. It starts with me. Either that's a point guy or that's a guy, a great passing facilitator on the half wall to facilitate. It was Drew for years on the left side on the power play to open up the ice. Till you have that guy, it doesn't matter. You got to find that guy who takes the ownership. He's like, I'm the alpha. It starts with me. If the power play goes into the zone and they don't get it to him right away, that when you go to the bench, you got to expect to hear about it. I told you, get me the puck. It starts with me. You got to have that guy, that personality on a power play.
It feels like
it won't go anywhere.
It kind of feels like Mishkov's going to be that guy, right? Like it feels like it feels like he has the DNA, like he has that winner DNA. Remember, like the reports coming out when he was initially drafted or being scouted, there were some people that tried to float out, this is Chicklets guys, tried to float out the idea that, he was a hothead, he was a pain in the ass to play with, guys didn't like sharing the locker room, all that kind of stuff. And
it was all baloney.
And what we ended up seeing after he got drafted, and then especially once he came stateside, was that a few of the vets who he played with in the KHL said the thing that stood out about him is that at such a young age, he knew exactly what he wanted. He knew exactly how he wanted to play and reach that next level. And a lot of older players just aren't used to that from a young guy. So to me, he kind of has the DNA of the alpha dog.
He does, but I don't know if I love him as the facilitator.
All right, go ahead.
Because I think the facilitator, I think there's a structural element to facilitating. We get set up, and he doesn't play with a lot of structure, which makes him more dangerous in the offensive zone. I've often said he's positionless. He ranked right with the centers in the NHL on high danger scoring chances because of the way he moves to the middle of the ice. And when defending in hockey or in basketball or in football, predictability is your friend. If you know what they're going to do, you are way ahead. If you have no idea what Mishkov's going to do or where he's going to be, that's a real problem because you can't pre-scout it.
Yeah.
He's just going to be all over. He's just going to be on good ice no matter what. So I'd like to get it to him very early in a power play because I think his vision, his execution, his IQ it's clear. It's through the roof. So he's got to be a huge part of it.
It's going to be really interesting to see where they go next because I do wonder how much this changes their draft plan, right? So we've kind of gone back and forth. I had Kimmelman on Friday. Ant and I have kind of debated this on Snow the Goalie with Bundy, but are they going to go for need? Are they going to go after another center? Is there going to be a potential here where they look at it and they say, you know what, if Porter Martone's there at number 6 and they don't trade up, they don't trade back, if he brings some size to the table and if you can address center in some way, does he maybe get a look? It seems like everybody that I talk to doesn't think that Porter Martone is really a guy that they're looking at 6, even if he does fall there. Feels like they'd probably still swing for a center. Just based on the fact that you kind of seem to feel like Zegras might end up being more of a wing. Would you agree that, I don't know, I guess they probably are still looking at a center? That's probably still the goal?
I think that's absolutely the preference, and also just from a organizational depth standpoint, too. They need centers. And, even if you draft a center and he's not a center in the NHL, you can move him to wing. Yeah. You very rarely can move a wing to center. In the NHL. So you have a lot of, as Howie Roseman called it, optionality. Optionality is good to do, have a player that can fill multiple roles or have a path to the NHL and being a good player in multiple positions. I think if Martone was there, they have to look at him. If he's the best player on your board, you got to take him. I don't care about the depth at right wing. I've got to make moves then to free up his path. And I think he's one of those guys that his path to the NHL is more accelerated than some other guys. Doesn't mean he's going to be a better NHL player than them. That's just because of his build. I mean, he's already, big kid. He's got 208, 210 pounds on him. He's got a man's body already. A lot of these guys, like Jake O'Brien, if you saw him in person, you'd be like, dude, you look like you're 15. Yeah. You don't shave. You don't have hair under the pits yet. And you got a long way to go. So I think you'd have to consider him. But I think obviously the preference is that they do go center. And I firmly believe that some team, even before Schaefer's going number 1, there's a chance that there could be another D that goes off the board before the Flyers pick, leaving them more centers available to take than maybe we conventionally think, because D are always moving up. And if you're a team at 5, do you go, I want the 4th best forward, or do I want the 2nd best D? I think teams think like that. So we'll see where it goes. A team like Utah, I could see doing it. Yeah, we'll see. There's some variables in there for sure that could throw it. So you could have a pick of Hagens or You could have a pick of O'Brien, Brady Martin. You got some options there that I think they're going to be available.
Have you done any kind of video work on Roger McQueen at all? I mentioned him off the top of the show. This is my thing. I don't necessarily want the Flyers to look at Roger McQueen at 6. Sounds like the medicals have been better. I've long hoped that he was going to fall into the early teens, and then Danny gets a little bit frisky, and that's the big balls move. That's the move up from 22. Get the guy with the thing you can't teach, size, 6'5" frame, and you kind of throw all your chips in there and say, all right, if we're going to take a swing here, we get our guy at 6, whoever that ends up being, but you try to move back up and see if you can get the steal of the draft. Like, have you watched much on McQueen? Do you have a feeling either way about whether or not you think he's going to ultimately be a, can we say, very good NHL player?
Yeah, I mean, with him, it's really interesting because he moved up so far and so fast. You know, Craig Button had him early season this past year at 30. Now he's got him at like 5 or 6. It's crazy the rise that he has had. You can do that if at 6 you get a guy that you feel is going to be a really good NHL player. And that's the plan. That's what you're doing. You're getting a guy that's going to be a difference maker for you, not a superstar, but a really good top player for you. Maybe a superstar, you never know. But you can take that swing in a draft where you have multiple picks in the first round. You can't, it's tougher to do when that's the only thing you do in the first round, because if it doesn't work out, you have a gap. You have that gap and you're missing it, especially at the center position. And we saw him do it with O'Brien before. That also was a big risk pick. Back when Ron Hextall did it with Jay O'Brien. But they also had another pick in that draft. Jay O'Brien everything went sideways for that kid. Yeah. He took the risk on it, but way too early. But I don't know. How far do you have to go up to get him is the question.
Yeah, and like ultimately, what will it cost?
10 or 12?
So, like, yeah, I think that maybe 12-ish is probably the range. Here's the thing that
I don't think a team wants to drop back, though, from 12 to 22. That's the problem.
You're probably right. And so that's where it comes down to, like, what exactly are you going to be able to sweeten the pot with? Like, is it getting 22 and 31 and something else? The thing that it feels like to me that people automatically, there's like this, it's almost like a gag reflex, right? It's like getting the hammer on your knee, that little reflex test. Anytime you mention the possibility of trading up or offer sheeting, because I'm a big believer, offer sheets sometimes make sense. People typically fire back with, well, you can't give up the lottery ticket for Gavin McKenna next year. And I think that has to come from a place. Like, if that is your mentality, that also means that your mentality is that no matter what the Flyers do this offseason, they're going to finish in the bottom 11 next year. Because in order for you to be able to move up for Gavin McKenna, right, to make one of those unprecedented kind of leaps like the Islanders did, or even like Utah did, right?
Yep.
You have to be in the top 11. Otherwise, it doesn't work. And I fundamentally do not believe the Flyers are going to be there next year. So I don't look at it as giving up the lottery ticket for Gavin McKenna. I look at it as giving up what might end up being like the 16th pick in the draft, which still could be valuable to you. But if you're moving up for a guy that you think is ultimately worth it, then it's worth it. It's just part of that organizational calculus, I guess.
I always say for guys that the minute they think about should they retire, they should retire. Once you've planted the seed. So if you think about Gavin McKenna and that's the reason why you're going to or not make a deal, then you're not in the right headspace. The real big question is going to be, no matter what, we'll see what else happens this offseason, but what do they acquire in net? How do they stabilize that position to be at least, league average? And I'm not looking for a 912 save percentage for the team because that's not realistic anymore in the NHL. It's going to be about 900 because of the lack of quantity of shots teams are taking these days. But you got to be at least league average in goaltending, because that can undo you. That can undo any team. So McKenna's in place for me until they show me the solution at goaltending. And the solution, in my opinion, is not Sam Ersson and Fedorov, not Sam Ersson and Kolosov, obviously not Bjarnason. So who's that other goalie to share the crease with Sam Ersson? That's the big question for me.
Seems like Jake Allen's been a name that's been floated out there as being a potential target, like could make sense.
He's a veteran guy,
Thatcher Demko, his
only
name was
1
kind
year
of floated
left.
out there. 1 year left.
Injury prone though.
Could be a high upside guy that was in the mix for the Vezina. Like, there could be
I
something.
talked to Kevin Woodley about him. Kevin covers the Canucks for the NHL.com, and he's the in-goal radio guy. And I just talked to him last week about Thatcher Demko, and I said, did they figure out the injury? And he said they're pretty sure they have it figured out now. But he's a guy that, I mean, if you trade for a guy like that and he gets hurt, you're right back where you were last year.
Yeah.
So that's a little risky. Like Gibson, same thing, missed a lot of time. It's risky. Gibson's got a couple years left. Demko's got one, and only at $5.1 million. So, and the Canucks aren't looking to trade him. They want to go into the season with both guys because they think his value might go up in season as a deadline guy if he can prove healthy and be good with Lankinen. So you're gonna have to give up a pretty penny to get a guy on with 1 year left in Thatcher Demko as well.
Well, it very much feels like Fedorov is going to ultimately be spending the year with the Phantoms, right? I mean, that money.
He'll get some Flyers games. Yeah, invariably there'll be some injuries, right?
There will be an injury. I mean, if Sam Erson's one of your two goalies, there will be an injury at some point this year. You just hope it's not like, the fourth groin pull of the year or whatever for Erson.
Especially in the beginning of the year, like the way he started last year.
Yeah.
Like, that's a horrible way for a goalie to start a year, like kind of in and out.
Kolosov, very much. I think this is going to be like somewhere between The Bold and the Beautiful and The Young and the Restless, right? Like on CBS after Price is Right is over. There's going to be that nice little stopgap soap opera. I mean, you have people who said that he claims he's going back to Belarus. There are others who say no, the plan is for him to be at Flyers camp.
I think he'll be in the ECHL and also stay in Belarus as a result. Because, wild. I mean, if Fedorov's going to be with the Phantoms, and Bjarnason's definitely going to be with the Phantoms, you're not going to have three guys. Learn Reading. Yeah. Go visit the Pagoda in Reading because you'll be in the East Coast League. So
if he ends up back in the K, although that's like the weird thing of all of this, right? The Flyers still own his rights, so the idea that he's going to just be able to kind of not bully his way, but like make his way back to Dynamo Minsk or something, that would I think be the first time that a KHL team in recent memory would have violated the rights of an NHL team.
CBA.
I'm not exactly sure that you want to do that. It does feel like there's been that good pipeline because, as we know,
they'd have to give him permission.
NHL teams and KHL teams, they definitely never speak to one another, and they're not allowed. Not allowed. These players just figure out ways to buy themselves out of their contracts. There's nothing to do. But in the midst of all that, like I just can't imagine that even the KHL would want to have that precedent set where you're trying to claw a guy back. Like,
they'd have to get permission. Yeah. And look, does it behoove the Flyers to give it or not? Do you want the guy to just sit and rot, or if he can go over there and play well for Dynamo Minsk? Maybe he ups his trade value for you. I don't think he's going to up it to a point where it's going to be substantial, though. I really don't. So, I mean, I'm really disheartened with the way his whole kind of thing is gone. Going back to last summer, not being here for development camp, saying he overslept a flight or something. I mean, this isn't kindergarten. Like, what are we doing here? And then the 3 goalie thing, which never works at any level. And I just he wasn't on the Phantoms playoff roster, didn't play. So, I mean, there's a lot of things there that era is probably kaput.
Yeah. Before I let you go, because I know that you've got places to go and people to see.
I got to go get radiation. I can't wait.
Well, so there have been people asking all along from the time you came on the show until got Andrew Fawcett here with a super chat. Thanks, Andrew. Says looking strong. There are people asking about how you're feeling, how things are going. So you said you're going for radiation. Want to give people an update for those who might not be keeping up with your day-to-day, how things are going so far?
Well, yeah, I'm in the middle right now. I guess you would term it phase 2 of my treatment, and phase 2 is 28 radiation treatments, Monday through Friday, every day, and I also take capecitabine, I think that's how you say it, okay. Which is a chemo pill. I take 3 in the morning, 3 at night. And I'm getting that, and I'm starting to get the side effects of there's a cumulative effect to the side effects of this. Mm-hmm. Fatigue is one. I feel good today because I didn't have it over the weekend. But as I go through the week, I'll be getting more and more fatigued, and it gets really fatiguing by the end of the week. That combined with the chemo pill as well. But the chemo infusions that I went through from January through April for 4 months, they were effective. So that's good. My scans after were good. When I'm done this on July 14th, but who's counting? I'll have 3 months before I get scanned again, which I didn't even know about until just recently. And that's because they got to let my insides heal to get a proper reading of, where I'm going to be at that point. Hopefully I'll be cancer free and I can maybe avoid the surgery if I can go in and If they want to go in and do the surgery and make it totally curative, I can make that decision at that point. But I'm having the surgery if there's any cancer left in me, for sure. If I don't have any cancer, if I have NED, no evidence of disease, then I'll maybe have to make a decision. Surgeon did tell me I'm not going to open you up if there's nothing to take out. So I'm going to have another surgery now for hernia. So
yeah,
I busted through my inguinal hernia through this process. Won't tell you how because it's not pleasant. So yeah, I mean, I'm like falling apart, but we keep pushing, we keep banging, and we're going to keep going until this is in my rearview mirror. But if you're 45 or older, get a colonoscopy. If you're not feeling well, advocate for yourself. I didn't, and that's how you can avoid being where I am. They took 3 polyps out of me when they went in. They also have one that was a 5-centimeter tumor, so that could have been a polyp if I would have gone in there when I was supposed to, but I didn't because I was scared of a colonoscopy. So I saw somebody ask about Alex Lyon.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We'll throw it back to that real quick. Where was it at? Here we go. Joe Papel says Alex Lyon is a UFA, also played in the Phantoms 5 overtime game.
Yeah. Took the job from Bobrovsky a couple years ago.
What about signing Alex Lyon? So,
I mean, Alex is interested.
He didn't leave here in any way in a negative way, and he ended up getting a great opportunity elsewhere. Could you see a scenario where he comes back with this dearth of experience and says, all right?
I'm very tight with him. I have texted with him. He's open to the I'd love to come back.
Wow.
Loved his time here. He's a great guy, insanely smart, a political science major from Yale. Not bad, not too shabby. And he would love to come back, great communicator. I just don't know that he's consistently at the pedigree that you need.
Yeah.
And I hate to say that, but I don't think that that's the answer in this situation. But he is available. I mean, he's played really well, really carved himself out. A good NHL resume over with Detroit and with the Florida Panthers and Carolina. So he won a Calder Cup, and famously in that picture was giving it the finger. But yeah, good guy. I just don't think this is the right spot and situation for him. Unfortunately, I would love to have him back, but I just don't see it.
Remains to be seen what'll happen. I do want to thank you for hopping on. And last minute, I felt
Anytime.
like of all the people to bring on, felt like people, get a little boost from hearing from you.
Yeah, I'm excited about this because the big thing about it, Russ, for me, is he a player that's performed well lately? No. I think the big thing about this is, it's another thing that they said they were going to do that they're doing, but also this is a symbolic move for this next phase. You got to take some low risk, high reward plays to be good in this league. I mean, look at Florida. Forsling, a waiver pickup. Verhaeghe, a waiver pickup. Dude's got like 5 or 6 Stanley Cup playoffs game-winning goals in overtime. You got to find those guys in a 32-team league. You got to have some stones. You got to put some, chips in the middle of the table. You might lose some of them. You got to be damn near perfect to become a really good team in today's game. But that's the thing with Zegras. Last year of an RFA deal. You're not married to him. So I think this is a symbolic move. Another one where you really didn't see it coming. I love when a GM can operate clandestinely, not from a content provider, or I'm not a reporter, but for the reporter standpoint. But I think this is symbolic. I think there's more to come this week. So not only the draft, but I think there's more to come. So I'm excited about it.
Trades in the pipeline.
I'm just so tired of friggin' losing.
I know. Well, I mean, listen, it's done. For better or worse, it would appear that a lot of the losing is done.
Yeah.
People were like listen, at the end of last year, people were very much of the mentality. Gavin McKenna's right there. Suck for one more year. I think the Mishkov coming over thing fundamentally changed their plan. They won't admit it, but I do think that it fundamentally changed a big part of their plan. I think that they probably would have been willing to suck again next year had it not been for Mishkov coming over early. But at this point now, the biggest organizational malpractice you could commit, at least in my mind, would be not getting him a center. You now have Zegras. We don't know if that's going to ultimately bear fruit as maybe a 2C on this team. Can't envision that he's going to be a 1C. But as a competent center who could play with Mishkov and maybe help Mishkov's development along, there's some real upside there.
He'll fit right in, too. I mean, he's very close with Jamie Drysdale.
And Cam York, apparently. There's pictures of the three of them
Yeah.
floating around right now. So
Yeah. So, I mean, he'll fit right in with those guys. And a guy playing for his a big contract in an RFA year in a change of scenery situation, I don't think is ever a bad thing. You'll find out a lot about what he is this year. If he's a dog, you'll know that because he's playing for his financial future. And that, I don't care what people say. You're a competitor. You're playing for money, a lot of money. That's the ultimate incentive. So I'll be real interested to see it. Again, what this week is going to entail. I'm fascinated by it already. I'm ready to go. Flyers getting out there and making some things happen.